Hello and welcome back to the channel. So today I wanted to talk about San Martin watches. Now San Martin was founded in 2016 and they're pretty famous around watch circles for being the AliExpress brand with the best bang for buck. The best fit and finish that you can get for a reasonable price. Now I bought my first San Martin watch 5 years ago and I've pretty much had one every year which I bought and sold to check in with the brand. Nothing stayed in the collection yet, but I have noticed some gradual changes within the brand. So today I want to take a look at my newest addition from San Martin and then just talk a little bit about the pros and cons of buying a San Martin watch in 2025. Anyway, to start with, let's take a look at the newest watch which I ordered in the November sale, and thanks to the Canada Post strikes, I got it about 2 weeks ago. Let's take a look. So this is the San Martin SN0130 in peacock green. It looks a bit like malachite, but I think it's painted when I look up close. Nonetheless, it is a good looking dial. The watch itself is 42mm in diameter, it's 48.5mm lug to lug, it's 12.8mm thick, and it's got an annoying 21mm lug width. It offers 100 meters of water resistance. It is a sapphire crystal as we would expect, and this has got the Seiko NH35 inside of it. Now I don't have a problem with the NH35 in a watch like this because it means that they keep the price down, and really for the price that I paid for this watch, the fit and finish really is extraordinary. Taking a closer look at the dial, there is nothing that you probably haven't seen before. If you've owned a San Martin or watched some other YouTube videos, you've got the applied logo, which seems to be a little bit love or hate depending on who you ask. I'm firmly in the love camp with this logo. The applied indices, which are superbly finished, and they are super reflective. Then the hands are all high polish, but they look diamond cut, very sharp and crisp edges. And of course that second hand does have that rather large counterbalance, which I'm also not a huge fan of, and I know a lot of other people share that sentiment as well. Date window at the 3 o'clock on this one, nice surround on that again, matches the quality of the indices, and not too much text, which is great, just automatic, and then the water resistance underneath, so it stops the dial from being too cluttered. And it is worth mentioning with this dial, it's quite a bright green, so a lot of the time I find green watches that you purchase, they tend to be quite dark and in shadows. You can almost mistake them for black. You certainly won't have that problem with this peacock green. Now talking of the bezel, it's very nicely finished, but it is fixed and it just has the numbers 1 to 12 on it. So it doesn't really serve much purpose, I guess, unless you are learning to tell the time for the first time. Despite being a kind of weird addition, I've gotten used to it. I'm not going to show you the watch on the time graph with this one because I did a whole video on how I regulate my watches using this particular watch, so I'll link that in the description. And spoiler alert, this watch came running horribly, but it's running pretty good now. The crown on this one is very nicely finished, it has the San Martin hexagon logo on the side, easy to grip, and it's really smooth. I've got to say the threading on this particular watch is super nice. You don't always find that with AliExpress watches. Looking at the case, you've got a mixture of brushing and polishing, and it's the crispness of the lines between the brushing and polishing, even under macro, and the high quality mirror finish that I get on this case that really highlights San Martin's finesse at case finishing. It really does sit above other watches in this price point, and to be honest, I think it's comparable to $1,000 off-the-shelf Swiss watches. If you enjoy case finishing like I do, I don't see how you can be disappointed with this particular watch. And the same for the polished edge on the bezel as well. It's to an equally high standard. The bracelet on this one feels substantial. I think the design really suits the watch. I'm not going to give any credit to San Martin for the design on the bracelet because it looks almost identical, although a slightly shrunken version of my Hamilton Frogman bracelet. And I don't also know that Hamilton were the first people with this bracelet design either, so yeah, I don't know the history, but it's definitely not San Martin's design. That said, I appreciate anything that's not an O or a J style bracelet, so I'm grateful it's something different. Milled inner and outer clasp as you'd expect, And the adjustment on this clasp is via a spring-loaded button on the inside, and you can extend and retract the bracelet there. So it does have a micro adjust, but I've got to be honest with you, and I might be massively in the minority here, I much prefer clasps like this Mido, where you have external pushers, and therefore you don't have to take the watch off on a hot day or when things get cold and your wrist shrinks in order to adjust the bracelet. Case back, yes, there is one. Lume on this is reasonable. I consider this as a sort of everyday sports watch. It's not specifically a dive watch. So with that in mind, the Lume is good and it does last until the next day, but it doesn't glow as bright as a diver and there's not as many layers as you would get on a dive watch. But again, for the type of watch, hey, I think it's pretty good. Just a quick note to say, if you're enjoying today's video, please don't hesitate to like, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell notification icon down there so you don't miss another upload. As a small channel, I really appreciate your support. Anyway, back to this San Martin. The definite pros with this particular watch, it has fantastic value. The fit and finish and the quality of this watch, of the parts, is exactly what I would expect from San Martin, and that's a high bar. It really doesn't disappoint. I also find the watch extremely comfortable throughout the day, and whilst I have used the micro adjust a couple of times, it's small enough increments that the watch is never too loose or too tight with that adjustment. In terms of the negatives with this particular watch, well, it did turn up running pretty poor, and that's why I made the regulation video. I would also love it if this bezel wasn't fixed. I would love to have a one-piece milled bezel that I could actually rotate and use as a second time zone, rather than just this one, which is a bit of decoration. Other negatives, well, I spoke about the lug width being 21mm, but on the topic of the bracelet, have a look at this link. It's very stiff, it doesn't articulate properly, and it is only one link and it's only minor, but it's certainly noticeable. And finally, I did find one sharp edge on the case, which I'll show you. It's worth to point out, it doesn't feel sharp when it's on the wrist, and it's not the easiest one to notice in your hand, but when I run my fingers along the case, I was able to find it. So yeah, it might be an issue on different size wrists to me. So I didn't want to spend the whole video dwelling just on this particular watch. I wanted to summarize actually with the brand San Martin and how they've developed in my experience over the last 5 years or so that I've been buying their watches. I still think they are the best value brand that you can buy on AliExpress. If you love fit and finish and you've got a tight budget, there really is nothing better. Every now and then one of the other AliExpress brands like a Chronos, a Seastern, Ixandao might release a watch and you think, yeah, that's pretty close to San Martin's quality, but it's never consistent, and San Martin seems to have this ridiculous consistency that when they were the best 5 years ago, I didn't think that 5 years later they'd still be the best, so kudos for that. They also offer a 2-year warranty, which is better than the 12 months offered by a lot of watch brands. And if you're worried about the distance with that warranty, well, if you're in the USA, you're probably okay, because I noticed Mark over at Islander Watches now stocks San Martin, so warranty claims would be going through him. If you're not, then yes, granted, you still have to deal with the distance for those warranty claims. Perhaps the biggest development in San Martin is the adoption of original designs, or somewhat original designs, even if they are inspired by other brands and other watches. They really are moving away from strict one-to-one homages, and I think that's a really good thing. And finally, I quite like AliExpress. I think it offers good buyer protection. I've had refunds through there before when I've had issues, and the shipping has got faster, aside from when it gets to Canada and they have to deal with Canada Post. But there are a few negatives, and the first one doesn't just apply to San Martin, it's any watches that you ship long distance, and that is magnetization. Now maybe I've been unlucky, but recently probably 1 in every 5 watches have turned up magnetized and running fast. Maybe from customs and border checks, I'm not 100% sure. If you want to know how to demagnetize, there is a video on my channel, but yeah, I'm really noticing this. Second point, which I touched on already, is with the warranty. That 2-year warranty, if you have an issue and you have to return it to China, then you're going to have to pay quite a sum of money for that, and normally the brand doesn't cover it. So it can be frustrating, you're going to lose the watch for a long period of time, and yes, you've got to pay a lot more postage than they probably paid to send you the watch in the first place, and that's a risk. The third point, of course, there is no brand prestige and no heritage with San Martin, or at least certainly not a lot. I do enjoy brands with prestige, with heritage and with stories. That's why I have a collection of watches and not just one watch. And the final point, and this one doesn't bother me at all, but some people, which I will always notice in the comments, just cannot get behind a brand that manufactures its watches in China. Despite the fact that maybe everything else in the room they're sitting in might have come from China. But yes, for some people, it seems to really insult them. I don't really understand why. I have no issue with buying a watch from pretty much any country in the world. But it's worth to bear in mind, it does seem to raise a few negative comments whenever I mention San Martin. So in conclusion, it would be hard for me not to recommend San Martin if you really prioritize value for money and fit and finish on your watches. I really don't think anybody can rival San Martin at this moment in time. I think San Martin has grown a lot as a brand in the last 5 years or so, and I probably didn't expect that. So I hope they continue with this trajectory of more and more interesting original designs and maintaining the fit and finish and the value for money over the next 5 years as well. But we will see. Anyway, please do let me know any thoughts that you have on the brand. And with that said and done, hopefully I will catch you on the next one, and thank you so much for watching if you've made it to the end of the video. Cheers.